It's a real pleasure for us to be here with superb musicians, amazing musicians. For me personally, it's also an honor and a pleasure to be with my poem, my friend, much admired poet, Charlie SIMIC. Maybe as a quick introduction, I'll say we don't think of this as mainly a kind of hink-hand nostalgia. Look, we're going to wear beards and berets and say, yeah, man. These are two great American arts. The art of Dizzy Gillespie and Duke Ellington, Charlie Parker, those people, like the art of Wallace Stevens and Marianne Moore and Emily Dickinson and Walt Whitman, these are part of the glory of America. If people ask 1,000 years from now, who are the Americans, these arts will be an important central part of the answer. And it's gratifying and not just kind of silly, though the silliness is fun too, to be part of an occasion that brings this together. Should we just start?
Start. I want to say a couple of words. I mean, it's everything you said is true. I mean, one of the great contributions that America made in the 20th century to the arts, most original one, is jazz. I mean, I dreamed of something like this, not to be, I mean, when I was young, I mean, I imagined I'd be playing saxophone or piano, because I spent my youth in clubs and listening to jazz, but, you know, here I am, reading poems, which was not too bad. There's a great poet, Robert Pinsky, next to me, and there's fabulous musicians. So we're going to start. Robbie's going to read some poems, and I'm going to read some poems, and then we're going to play some music.
Okay, first poem is called Samurai Song. Samurai Song. When I had no roof, I made audacity my roof. When I had no supper, my eyes died. When I had no eyes, I listened. When I had no ears, I thought. When I had no thought, I waited. When I had no father, I made care my father. When I had no mother, I embraced order. When I had no friend, I made quiet my friend. When I had no enemy, I opposed my body. When I had no temple, I made my voice my temple. I have no priest, my tongue is my choir. When I have no means, fortune is my means. When I have nothing, death will be my fortune. Need is my tactic. Detachment is my strategy. When I had no lover, I courted my sleep. ABC, poem of 26 words arranged in alphabetical order. ABC. Anybody can die, evidently. Few go happily, irradiating joy, knowledge, love. Many need oblivion, painkillers, quickest respite, sweet time unafflicted, various world, X equals your zenith. Equal sign is punctuation, it doesn't count. And I will close with the want bone. The want bone. The tongue of the waves tolled in the earth's bell. Blue rippled and soaked in the fire of blue. The dried mouth bones of a shark, and the hot swale gaped on nothing but sand on either side. The bone tasted of nothing and smelled of nothing. A scalded, toothless harp, uncrushed, unstrung. The joined arcs made the shape of birth and craving, and that welded open shape kept mouthing, oh. Ossified cords held the corners together in groin spirals, pleated like a summer dress. But where was the limber grin, the gash of pleasure? Infinitesimal mouths bored away, the beach scrubbed and etched and pickled it clean. But oh, I love you, it sings, my little, my country, my food, my parent, my child. I want you, my own, my flower, my thing, my life, my likeness, my oh.
To explain how this is going to work, we're going to alternate between poetry and music. A poem called Club Midnight. Are you the sole owner of a seedy nightclub? Are you its sole customer, sole bartender, sole waiter prowling around the empty tables? You put on wee hour girly shows with dead stars of black and white films. Is your office upstairs over the neon lights, or down deep in the rat cellar? Are bearded Russian thinkers your silent partners? Do you have a doorman by the name of Dostoevsky? Is Fu Manchu coming tonight? Is Miss Emily Dickinson? Do you happen to have an immortal soul? Do you have a sneaky suspicion you have none? Is that why you flip a white pair of dice in the dark, long after the drawing closes? New York City poem taking place in a long time ago in 1958, fall of 1958. And the title of the poem is Shelley. Shelley is the great romantic British poet, and there are some lines of Shelley here that I just kind of put in as I remember them. Shelley. Poet of the dead leaves, driven like ghosts, driven like pestilence-stricken multitudes. I read you first one rainy evening in New York City in my atrocious Slavic accent, saying the mellifluous verses from a battered, much-stained volume I had bought earlier that day in a second-hand bookstore on 4th Avenue, run by initiate of the occult masters. The little money I had being almost spent, I walked the streets, my nose in the book. I sat in a dingy coffee shop with last summer's dead flies on the table. The owner was an ex-sailor who had grown a huge hump on his back while watching the rain, the empty street. He was glad to have me sit and read. He'd refill my cup with a liquid dark as river Styx. Shelley spoke of a mad, blind, dying king, of rulers who neither see nor feel nor know, of graves from which a glorious phantom may burst to illumine our tempestuous day. I too felt like a glorious phantom going to have my dinner in a Chinese restaurant I knew so well. It had a three-fingered waiter who'd bring my soup and rice each night without ever saying a word. I never saw anyone else there. The kitchen was separated by a curtain of glass beads which clicked faintly whenever the front door opened. The front door opened that evening to admit a pale little girl with glasses. The poet spoke of the everlasting universe of things, of gleams of a remoter world which visit the soul in sleep, of desert, peopled by storms alone. The streets were strewn with broken umbrellas which looked like funereal kites this little Chinese girl might have made. The bars on McDougal Street were empty. There had been a fist fight. A man leaned against a lamppost, arms extended as if crucified, the rain washing the blood off his face. In a dimly lit side street where the sidewalk shone like a ballroom mirror at closing time, a well-dressed man without any shoes asked me for money. His eyes shone. He looked triumphant, like a fencing master who had just struck a mortal blow. How strange it all was, the world's raffle, that dark October night. The yellowed volume of poetry with its splendors and blooms, which I studied by the light of storefronts, drugstores, and barber shops, afraid of my small, windowless room, cold as a tomb of an infant emperor. Finally, in this first set, for me, a poem called My Beloved. This has always been one of the great problems. I mean, how to write a poem extolling the virtue of your beloved. Poets already in the 3rd century BC were complaining that it's tough coming up with new comparisons. So it's much tougher today than ever before. My beloved. In the fine print of her face, her eyes are 2 loopholes. No, let me start again. Her eyes are flies in milk. Her eyes are baby Draculas. To hell with her eyes. Let me tell you about her mouth. Her mouth's the red cottage where the wolf ate grandma. Yeah, forget about her mouth. Let me talk about her breasts. I get a peek at them now and then. And even that's more than enough to make me lose my head. So, I better tell you about her legs. When she crosses them on the sofa, it's like the jailer unwrapping a parcel. And in that parcel is a Christmas cake. And in that cake, a sweet little file that gasps her name as it files my chains. And now, Mike Mainieri.
Tremendous thrill and fulfills a dream for me to be standing here hearing that classic jazz tune, Will You Need Me, played by musicians like Andrew Cyrille, Lonnie, Plaxico, Mike Mainieri. In high school, my ambition was to be a saxophone player. I still hack at my tenor with the Vijay Iyer tapes playing on the machine. And the horn, the saxophone for me, is a very important symbol of culture. It was made an American, in fact an African-American instrument by geniuses who took a kind of a marching band thing that was invented by a Belgian guy in Paris in the 19th century who happened to be named Sax, Adolphe Sax. I'm going to read you a poem called Ginza Samba. There is a jazz tune called Ginza Samba. I love the eclecticism of the title. For me, it's like what America has done in cultural ways, our better side. We know about our worst side. Ginza's Tokyo. Rio is samba. It's music that's almost a kind of religion in Brazil. The record I have, it's played by Cal Jader and the white Jewish jazz musician Stan Getz, and I believe the tune was written by the Italian Charlie Venturi. I'm going to read it to you, and while I read my poem Ginza Samba to you, the musicians are going to samba-ize a riff behind me. Ginza Samba. A monosyllabic European named Sax invents a horn, walla whirlity wah, a kind of twisted brazen clarinet, but with its column of vibrating air shaped not in the cylinder, but in a cone widening ever outward, and bawa spouting infinitely upward through an upturned, swollen golden bell rimmed like a gloxinia flowering in Sax's Belgian imagination, and in the unfathomable matrix of mothers and fathers as a genius graven humming into the cells of the body, or saved, cupped in the resonating rail of memory, changed and exchanged as in the trading of brasses, pearls and ivory, calicos and slaves, slave laborers and slave girls, two cousins in a royal family of Niger known as the Birds or Hawks. In Christendom, one cousin's child becomes a, quote, favorite Negro, end quote, ennobled by decree of the Tsar, and he founds a great family, a line of generals, dandies, and courtiers, including the poet Alexander Pushkin, killed in a duel concerning his wife's honor, while the other cousin sails in the belly of a slave ship to the port of Baltimore, where she is raped and dies in childbirth. But the infant will marry a Seminole, and in the next course of time, their child fathers a great hawk or bird, with many followers, among them this great-grandchild of the Jewish manager of a Pushkin estate, blowing his American breath out into the wiggly tune, uncurling its triplets and sixteenths, the Ginza Samba of breath and brass, the reed vibrating as a valve, the ether, the unimaginable wires and circuits of an ingenious box here in my room, in this house built 100 years ago while I was elsewhere. It is like falling in love, the atavistic imperative of someone's voice or face, the skill, the copper filament, the golden bell full of notes twirling through their invisible element from Rio to Tokyo and back again, gathering speed in the variations as they tunnel the twin haunted labyrinths of stirrup and anvil echoing here in the hearkening instrument of my skull.
You're hearing some great tunes by Thelonious Monk. Here's a little poem written, oh God knows, maybe 20, 25 years after the event, after hearing Thelonious Monk in a New York jazz club. This must have been 1959, 1960. And the title is the name of a Monk tune, and there are some other titles of Monk tunes, titles in the poem. Monk basically played only his own compositions. He didn't really have that many compositions altogether, probably maybe about 20, maybe a few more, but anyway, the poem is called Crepuscule with Nellie. Monk at the 5 spot late one night. Ruby, my dear, epistrophe. The place nearly empty because of the cold spell. One beautiful black transvestite alone up front, sipping his drink demurely. The music, Pythagorean, one note at a time, connecting the heavenly spheres. While I leaned against the bar, surveying the premises through cigarette smoke. All of a sudden, a clear sense of a memorable occasion, the joy of it, the delicious melancholy. This very strange man bent over the piano, shaking his head, humming, Misterioso. Then it was all over, thank you. Chairs being stacked up on tables, their legs up. The prospect of the freeze outside, a long walk home, making one procrastinate. Who said Americans don't have history, only endless nostalgia? And what the hell was Nelly? The band will play a monk tune around midnight. A poem entitled Unmade Beds. They're like shady rooms, peeling wallpaper, cracks on the ceiling, flies on the pillow. If you're tempted to lie down, don't be surprised. You won't mind the dirty sheets, the rasp of rusty springs, as you make yourself comfy. The room is a darkened movie theater where a grainy black and white film is being shown. A blur of disrobed bodies in the moment of sweet indolence that follows lovemaking. When the meanest of hearts comes to believe happiness can last forever. This is called Labor and Capital. The softness of this motel bed on which we made love demonstrates to me in an impressive manner the superiority of capitalism. At the mattress factory, I imagine the employees are happy today. It's Sunday, and they're working extra hours like us for no pay. Still, the way you open your legs and reach for me with your hand makes me think of the revolution. Red banners, crowd charging, someone stepping on a soapbox as the flames engulfed the palace, and the old prince in full view steps to his death from a balcony. This one is called Crazy About Her Shrimp. We don't even take time to come up for air. We keep our mouths full and busy, eating bread and cheese and smooching in between. No sooner have we made love than we are back in the kitchen. While I chop the hot peppers, she wiggles her ass and stirs the shrimp on the stove. How good the wine tastes that has run red out of a laughing mouth, down her chin and onto her naked tits. I'm getting fat, she says, turning this way and that way before the mirror. I'm crazy about her shrimp, I shout to the gods above.
Another poem about a musical instrument, in this case, a particular musical instrument. The Green Piano. Great thunderer, half-ton infant of miracles, torn free of charge from the universe by my mother's will. You must have amazed that half-respectable street of triple-decker families and rooming house painters the day that the bowl-ankled, oversized hams of your legs bobbed in procession up the crazy paved front walk, embraced by the arms of Mr. Poppick, the seltzer man, and Corridon, his black-skinned helper, tendering your thighs thick as a man up our steps. We are not reptiles. Even the male body bears nipples, as if to remind us we are designed for dependence and nutriment, past into future. O Europe, they budged your case, its ponderous guts of iron and brass, 10 kinds of hardwood and felt, up those heel-pocked risers and treads, splintering tinder. Angelic nurse of clamor, yearner, tinkler, dominator. O elephant, you were for me. When the tuner, Mr. Otto van Brunt, pronounced you excellent, despite the cracked sounding board, we obeyed him and swabbed your ivories with hydrogen peroxide. Now the colored neighbors could be positive that we were crazy and rich, as we thought the people were who gave you away for the moving out of their carriage house. They had painted you the color of pea soup. The drunk man my mother hired never finished antiquing you, ivory and umber. So you stood half done, a throbbing, mistreated noble, genuine. My mother's swollen livestock of love, lost one, unmastered. You were the beast she led to the shrine of my genius, mistaken. Endlessly I bonged according to my own chord system, humoresque, the talk of the town, what I say. Then, one day, they painted you pink. Pink is how my sister remembers you the Saturday afternoon when our mother fell on her head. Dusty pink, as I turn on the bench in my sister's memory to see our mother carried moaning up the last steps and into the apartment's living room, inaugurating the reign of our confusion. They sued the builder of the house she fell in. With the settlement, they bought a house at last. And one day when I came home from college, you were gone, oh mahogany breast, who nursed me through those years of the concussion. And there was a crappy little Baldwin Aquasonic in your place, gleaming, walnut shell. You were gone, oh despoiled one, pink one, forever green one, white and gold one, comforter, living soul.
Now, Andrew, Cyrille, and I are going to experiment. There's a thing in music that jazz musicians do called trading. You should trade fours, 4 bars here, 4 bars there. And it occurs to me that the form of poem, which is a rhymed couplet, just 2 lines, that's the whole poem, could be used to trade with drummers. So I put together a lot of couplets, many of them written 100 years ago. I have 7 or 8 of these. Walter Savage Landor, Ben Jonson done. One of them is by me. And what we're going to do is, I'm going to read a couplet, and Andrew is going to answer or respond on the drums. And I should say that these are not arranged to go together in any particular way. Some of them are meant to be kind of funny and silly. Some of them are meant to be rather somber. So we will now, my learned colleague and I are now going to trade. We'll start with couplets. On love, on grief, on every human thing, time sprinkles Lethe's water with his wing. This humanist, whom no belief constrained, grew so broad-minded, he was scatterbrained. XYZ, the cross, the fork, the zigzag, a few straight lines for pain, quandary, and evasion, the last of sides. Ben Jonson's poem addressed to the reader. Pray thee, take care that takes my book in hand, to read it well, that is, to understand. John Donne on Hero and Leander, also getting the 4 elements in while he's at it. Hero and Leander, both deprived of air, we both lie in one ground, both whom one fire had burned, one water drowned. Robert Herrick thinking about his girlfriend's leg. He was the Charlie SIMIC of his day. Fain would I kiss my Julia's dainty leg, which is as white and hairless as an egg. Walter Savage Landor on his general attitude. I do not know if I am proud, but this I know, I hate the crowd. On love, on grief, on every human thing, time sprinkles Lethe's water with his wing.
that little something. The likelihood of ever finding it is small. It's like being accosted by a woman and asked to help her look for a pearl she lost right here in the street. She could be making it all up, even her tears, you say to yourself as you search under your feet, thinking, not in a million years. It's one of those summer afternoons when one needs a good excuse to step out of a cool shade. In the meantime, whatever became of her? And why, years later, do you still, off and on, cast your eyes to the ground as you hurry to some appointment where you are now certain to arrive late? This is called Paradise, and was written in the 80s, but what I describe in the book is back to late 50s. Paradise. In a neighborhood once called Hell's Kitchen, where a beggar claimed to be playing Nero's fiddle while the city burned in midsummer heat, where a lady barber who called herself Cleopatra wielded the scissors of fate over my head, threatening to cut off my ears and nose, where a man and a woman went walking naked in one of the dark side streets at dawn. I must be dreaming, I told myself. It was like meeting a couple of sphinxes. I expected them to have wings, bodies of lions, him with his wildly tattooed chest, her with her huge, dangling breasts. It happened so quickly and so long ago. You know that time just before the day breaks, when one yearns to lie down on cool sheets in a room with shades drawn. The hour when the beautiful suicides lying side by side in the morgue get up and walk out into the first light. The curtains of cheap hotels flying out of windows like seagulls. But everything else quiet. Steam rising out of subway gratings. Bodies glistening with sweat. Madness. You might even say paradise.
Two poems to do with forgetting. The forgetting. The forgetting I notice most as I get older is really a form of memory. The undergrowth of things unknown to you young that I have forgotten. Memory of so much crap, jumbled with so much that seems to matter. Lieutenant Calais, Captain Easy, Mei Ling Sung, Sidi Sisti, and all the forgettings that preceded mine, Baghdad, Egypt, Greece, the plains, centuries of lootings of antiquities, obscure atrocities. Imagine a big tent filled with mostly kids yelling for poetry. In fact, it happened. I was there in New Jersey at the famous poetry show. I used to wonder, what if the Baseball Hall of Fame overflowed with too many thousands of greats, all in time unremembered? Hardly anybody can name all 8 of their great-grandparents. Can you? Will your children's grandchildren remember your name? You'll see, you little young jerks, your favorite music and your political furors too will need to get sorted in dusty electronic corridors. In 1972, Joanne Lai was asked the lasting effects of the French Revolution. Quote, too soon to tell. Remember, or was it Mao Zedong? Poetry made out of air strains to reach back to begats, and suspiring forward into air, grunting to beget the hungry or overfed future. Ezra Pound praises the emperor who appointed a committee of scholars to pick the best 450 no plays and destroy all the rest. the fascist. The stand-up master Stephen Wright says he thinks he suffers from both amnesia and déjà vu. Quote, I feel like I have forgotten this before. Who remembers the arguments when jurors gave Pound the only prize for poetry awarded by the United States government until then? I was in the big tent when the guy read his poem about how the Jews were warned to get out of the Twin Towers before the planes hit. The crowd was applauding and screaming. They were happy. It isn't that they were anti-Semitic or anything. They just weren't listening. Or, no, they were listening, but that certain way. In it comes, you hear it, and that self-same second, you swallow it or expel it. An ecstasy of forgetting. And there's a poem right after that one. It's a poem which I just enjoy sounding very stupid. And the poem is called, it's to do with what have you heard of Louis Louis. Louis Louis. I have heard of Black Irish, but I never heard of white Catholic or white Jew. I have heard of Is Poetry Popular, but I never heard of Lawrence Welk drove Sid Caesar off television. I have heard of Kwanzaa, but I have never heard of Bert Williams. I have never heard of Will Rogers or Roger Williams or Buck Rogers or Pearl Buck or Frank Buck or Frank Merriwell at Yale. I have heard of Yale, but I never heard of George W. Bush. I have heard of Harvard, but I never heard of numerus clausus, which sounds to me like some kind of pig Latin. I have heard of the Pig Boy. I have never heard of the Beastie Boys or the Scottsboro Boys, but I have heard singing boys. What they were called, I forget. I have never heard America singing, but I have heard of I Hear America Singing. I think it must have been a book we had in school. I forget. Getting to touch the tattoo on my right shoulder. Wearing the mitt. I feel its familiar weight and textures as the adroit one rests against it for a moment. They twine fingers. Lefty continues to experience considerable difficulty expressing himself clearly and correctly in writing. Comparison with his brother prevents him from putting forth his best effort. Yet this halt one too has felt a breast, thigh, clasped an ankle, or most intimate of all, the fingers of a hand. And possibly his trembling touch, as less merely adept and confident, is subtly the more welcome of the two. In the Elysian fields, where every defect will be compensated and the last will be first, this one will lead skillfully, while the other will assist. And as my shadow stalks that underworld, the right hand, too, will rejoice, released from its long burden of expectation, the yoke of dexterity finally laid to rest.
Finally, another New York poem called Paradise. In a neighborhood once called Hell's Kitchen, where a beggar claimed to be playing Nero's fiddle while the city burned in midsummer heat, where a lady barber who called herself Cleopatra wielded the scissors of fate over my head, threatening to cut off my ears and nose, where a man and a woman went walking naked in one of the dark side streets at dawn. I must be dreaming, I told myself. It was like meeting a couple of sphinxes. I expected them to have wings, bodies of lions. Him with his wildly tattooed chest, her with her huge dangling breasts. It happened so quickly and so long ago. You know that time, just before the day breaks, when one yearns to lie down on cool sheets in a room with shades drawn. The hour when the beautiful suicides, lying side by side in the morgue, get up You walk out into the first light. The curtains of cheap hotels flying on windows like seagulls. But everything else quiet. Steam rising out of the subway gratings. Bodies glistening with sweat. Madness. You might even say paradise. Thank you for coming.
Once again, to celebrate Mike Mainieri, high fives. Lonnie, Plaxico, please. And Mr. Andrew Cyrille on drums.
Rather than